I'm Rafting Tigger. This video is going to show you how the whole system goes together to make a note-free, very comfortable hang. Here is the complete NoGround kit if you buy the full system. Now, at the top here is the main pole, the trussing system, yellow for gathered end, truss hub, which is the triangular thing with the 3 truss poles, the hammock extension, it comes in 2 parts, a 15-inch and an 11-inch with a 2-inch connector, the guy lines and the guy line hub, a double end connector, and the 2-inch tarp end connector. A bag, yours will probably be different, 2 wires with toggles, 2 snow stakes, and 2 Alamuso anchors. The first step is to make the poles into hammock stands. I've gone through that in detail in a previous video, and I would highly recommend you go back to that. But I'm going to do this pretty fast. I have all the pieces in my hand. I have the pole. I have the truss lines. I have the 3 truss poles, and the 2 parts of the hammock extension, and of course the truss hub. Easiest if you do it on the ground. First thing you do is you take the parts off you don't need for the hammock extension. Top knob comes off. Foot comes off. You will use the foot later to suspend the tarp. The top knob you can just store in the storage bag. Truss hub goes on the pole. Short extension goes on. Long extension goes on. You have to have an open end. Foot goes in. Park it on the ground or it might all fall apart. I have my lines tied up so that they untangle. They don't tangle as they come undone. Connect the 3 lines. On top here. Get the guy line hub and guy lines and put it on top, and the tarp end connector goes up here. Now take your truss poles, slide your truss hub up, and put it in, and it has to go in all the way. Turn your lines so they're lined up, and pop them on, one at a time. Best to make sure that they're not tangled, however. Otherwise you get to undo it just like I did there. You can see it's not a big problem. Last one is hard because it has to have a lot of tension to it. I often will put it on the ground and pull up like that. Be careful not to get your finger pinched in. The last step in the setup is to put the circle lines on. You can either do it with your fingers or you can be lazy like me and use the fingernail file on a pocket knife. Screwdriver works well too, but I always carry the pocket knife with me when I'm backpacking, so it's no extra. Last one takes a little force. They need to be tight. So, we've got the assembled NoGround pole here. We're going to do it with the other one. We've now got both NoGround poles set up. Now it's time to set the stuff up First thing I need to do is I need to guesstimate where my anchors are going to go. This is a trial and error process. I use 4 steps between and 10 steps lengthwise. So I'm going to throw some anchors. One set of alamusus, second set of alamusus. To set the alamusu anchors, or whatever anchor you want, you need to get your anchors, in this case right here. The alamusus slip through this, go all the way up, and I'm going to put it right here. I'm lazy. I carry a 4-ounce hammer, but I could use a rock. Your choice. I've got the alamusu in the ground here. The guy line comes down, loops around the end, and goes into the alamusu. It's all the way down in the ground. Actually, I can pound this one a little bit more because I can feel it here. You want to make sure it gets all the way in the ground. The guy lines are UCR. You've got a constriction loop here. You've got a prusik to keep it tensioned here. This is very important. And this extra line here is for the tarp. We'll get to that later. This continues on up to the top of the pole. At the top of the pole here, we've got a quick link. This quick link is rated to 440 pounds, safe working load, according to the package. And I've got it looped into my hammock suspension right here. My hammock's in a snakeskin. We move over to the other side here. And in this side I happen to have one of Dutch's fancy hoopy loops, Amsteel loops. And I'm not using it that way, I just have the quick link looped in there. You've got the tarp connector extension right here because I don't have the tarp extensions on. And these follow down to some more alamusu anchors. Now, something that's very important. This foot is on the grass in soft ground. I can guarantee you, even at my weight of 140 pounds, I'll sink in about 2 inches if I don't do something. So, a rock will work, a stick will work, but I found something that's easy to carry and does not come with the kit. And that's the basket for a trekking pole. It is sitting on top of its basket. Now let's talk about guy lines. I've gone to UCR loops because I find them much more convenient than hoopy loops. So let me explain them. The production ones have a darker color that goes up to the guy line hub in the top of the pole, and a yellow one that goes out to the stake. This is the constriction loop here, and then this is the prusik, which is really important. If this is like here, all it takes is a slight bump and this line will loosen up. So make sure that's always down. Now, why I like the UCRs better is you got this tail here. Just reach up and loop it around the top of the pole if you want to put more tension on. Full tension. Slide this down all the way, get that prusik, and you've just tensioned the line. Much, much easier than using a hoopy loop. We've got our gathered in hammock set up with one pole and another pole with our guy lines all tensioned. Now, really important, gently test the system. It's the anchors that are going to be the problem. So, put your weight in it, look at your anchors, look at your truss lines, make sure those are solid. Bounce on it a little bit. Then get out and check your anchors for security. Okay, my anchors have all been checked. Now it's time to relax. As you can see, I've got a really good sit height on my poles right now. This is a full 11-foot hammock. I always use a structural ridge line. It helps me position the poles. Besides, I use it for everything from hanging gear to supporting my bug net. Really nice little thing. Now, if for whatever reason your sit height is not high enough, there's a couple of tricks you can do. If your sit height is too low, there's a couple of things you can do. One, as you can see, I've got a pretty good angle on the pole here. That isn't necessary. All you have to do is, well, you got to loosen the guy lines first. And push it up more vertical. Loop the guy line along it, pull it here, slide it down. Loop this one, slide it down. Bingo. We now have a more vertical pole. Still not high enough? We'll use a rock or a stick. Now I've got another about 4 inches to the sit height. It's way too high for me, but if for some reason yours isn't high enough, you can do that. That does not decrease the strength of the pole. Making the pole longer would decrease the strength. And I think I've optimized the pole length for strength. Now you say, hey, I need to put a tarp on. So what are we going to do? First of all, you take one of the feet you used. See the tarp connector? Just slip it on the hand. Do that with the other side. Now that you've got the tarp extension on, which is also the foot, you can take your tarp. There's 2 ways the tarp can go over, can work with the extension. You can put it over like this, resting on top of the rubber part, or you can have a loop that's set at the right height. Just loosen that, slip your loop through, get your guy lines. You always have to guy out the tarp extension. And then tighten up your guy lines. Here's the little loop in the guy lines to the hammock that I told you about. Told you I'd tell you about them later. They have a little line that goes all the way up to the end of the tarp extension and guides it out. Neat little trick. Of course, you can guy it all the way to the ground if you want. As you can see, I've got my tarp quite a bit higher than my structural ridge line. Gives me plenty of room underneath. Some really important points. You've got to have the tarp extension guyed out. You should have something underneath the hammock pole. Double check your anchors. And very, very important, the truss lines right here have to be tight. If they loosen up, the pole can fail.